the narrative and how you position your product to your customer base is just as important as the product itself. Your product story has to be the customer story.
Hey, and welcome to the Momentum Podcast, the show where FinTech meets AI. I'm your host, Stan Altshuller, investor, founder, and advisor to some of the world's top hedge funds, asset managers, and data companies. Each week, we'll dive into practical AI strategies to help you cut through the noise, beat data overload, build smarter workflows, and turn your ideas into results. We'll explore everything from AI tools for your daily workflows to building data-driven growth engines for your organizations. Here, you'll discover what's next in finance and how to stay ahead of the curve with AI. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Momentum Podcast. I'm your host, Stan Altshuller, and today we have a very special guest, Natasha.
Thanks,
welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Always a pleasure to talk to you. Why don't you take a little bit of time and give us a little bit of background about yourself and your journey?
I've spent my career helping fintech companies build products that live in their customer workflow. Early in my career, I started out on the build side of product, but I quickly gravitated toward the customer-facing side of product because I wanted to understand the why and not just the how. I spent over a decade at Liquidnet, where I led their global product organization, and I worked closely with institutional investors around the world. And one of the biggest lessons I learned there was that great products can fail if they're not living in if they're living in their own story instead of in the customer story. And that was a lesson I carried forward. And about 5 years ago, after Liquidnet was acquired, I started Strategic Innovation Advisors, SIA, because I wanted to help a variety of companies with their product strategy instead of focusing on just one product. And today I help fintech and capital markets companies answer the deceptively simple question of what should we build next, why, and who's going to use it.
I absolutely love that. This is very near and dear to my heart. And we've been friends for a long time. And I've kept in touch with your work and always followed you, which, by the way, at the end of this episode, we're going to tell everybody where to find Natasha. She's very active on LinkedIn, so definitely find her there. That link is going to be in the description. But I will say I've always liked how you've thought about product, the tough questions that you've asked, and the way your thought process worked. And over the years, we talked a lot about different frames, but I want to kind of zero in. What did you learn? Spending over a decade at one product is a lot, and those must have been very formative years. But what did you learn in the next 5, working with many different product companies, that you didn't learn working at Liquidnet for such a long time?
Liquidnet taught me how to build products at scale, and consulting taught me how universal product problems really are. Is at Liquidnet, I was immersed in one ecosystem so deeply. I understood our customers inside out. I knew when a trader at a London desk at a firm there had a similar trading style to a trader on the opposite side of the world in Denver, and that they were likely to adopt similar workflows. But consulting gave me the opportunity to step into a variety of companies, right? So there were AI startups, there were analytics platforms, alternative assets, and the variety of product suites was actually intimidating at first. But what surprised me was that I realized I was solving the same problem over and over and over again. Founders would say, well, engineering keeps building features so quickly, but they don't get used and we don't know why, or we have so many ideas and we don't know which one to focus on first. Or my favorite, we have 7 parallel strategic work streams and we're going to get them all done at the same time with our team. Yes, and we have a team of 12 people, but we can do all of them at once. So I realized most companies, they don't have a technology problem, they have an understanding the customer problem, and they need a good framework or a set of frameworks that would help them understand, focus, and deliver. So I'd say at Liquidnet, I learned how to build products at scale, but in consulting, I learned to build product strategy frameworks at scale.
Yeah, and that is exceptionally important. I think a lot of the founders that I speak to, at least in this industry, which is mostly fintech, I think we swim in the same world most of the time. The founder will have a lot of ideas. They know their product exceptionally well. They know the customers. The product management job, like the aspect of how do I prioritize where my limited resources are going to be focused for the next 2 to 3 months, right? And then the rest of the roadmap, 6 to 12 months. The question is exceptionally difficult to answer. And so maybe that will segue into like how you answer. So how do you go about answering that really tough and critical question, right? Because I guess if they get that wrong, there could be repercussions, right? Because somebody else might be building out something that's more important, more relevant to the market. How do you go about working with founders and answering the question, getting it right? And then maybe once you're done with that, if you can remember, how do you know that you got it right? But if you can't, tackle the first one first.
I think my principle is that you have to live in the world of the customer. So the first thing that I do is understand that world. The first thing that I do is map out the customer's workflow as it is today. Okay, here's their workflow today. What decisions are they making within that workflow? What data is supporting those decisions? Where does that data sit? Where are the data gaps? What actually just lives in their head? What is subjective? And very importantly, what are the pain points? What are they struggling with today? What is it that the client is trying to accomplish? So I just immerse myself in the client's world. I actually, when I come in, I usually say, I have no answers for you, just a lot of questions when I first start working with companies. And it's all about asking the right questions. And then once I understand where their customers are coming from, and I understand where the product sits within that customer's world, it's about bridging that gap and aligning which pain points the product is solving and where in the workflow it resides. And that's really the foundation for the product strategy and the product road and the product narrative. Because that's another piece of it. The narrative and how you position your product to your customer base is just as important as the product itself. Your product story has to be the customer story. And
that's a great answer.
The second part was how do can you repeat the second part of the question? It was how do you measure that you've been successful?
So how do you know? So meaning, let's say you go through those motions, right? And you do the research, you understand the customer workflow, the gap between where the product is today and where you think the customer wants to be, right? By the way, all of this sounds very jobs to be done-y, exceptionally jobs to be done-y. This is like jobs to be done is the framework that I used to love when I was much more involved in product in the Novus days. But once you do all of that, how do you then go back to the founder and say, okay, we got it. This was the right thing to do. And I have confidence because XYZ.
There's a combination of, there's the quantitative aspect and the qualitative aspect, right? So the qualitative aspect is when you're speaking to the customer and you are listening to them and you're understanding the way they think. So interviews tell you what the customer thinks, right? Usage tells you what does the customer actually do. And it's important to listen to a combination of those things because that's where the real insight comes in. And not just what features are being used, but also the patterns of how they're being used, of being able to map those workflows, of looking at the patterns of adoption. There was, if I can say a quick story, there was this customer that I was working with, and they prided themselves on how quickly they ship new functionality. And every release that contained dozens of enhancements, and the customers, they were reacting positively during the demo. So leadership saw the steady stream of innovation. They were thrilled.
Interesting.
But even though by every internal measure, the team believed they were succeeding because they were shipping features so quickly, and now that's even easier to do, right? I asked them, well, how many of those features are customers still using a month after release? Nobody knew the answer to that question because they were measuring success by delivery, not by adoption.
Right. Problem number one, we don't know.
So we started measuring product usage over time instead of just looking at the initial engagement, which wasn't even looked at that much to begin with. And it was a fascinating pattern because many features experienced, maybe unsurprisingly for many products, a spike in activity immediately after release or following the client demo, and then usage just declined. The novelty wore off, right? So there were only, of all the features that they were shipping, there were only a handful that actually became permanent parts of customer workflows. Very few. And those were the features that actually mattered. And another thing that was interesting and surprising, and that I see over and over, is that B2B companies often think they're selling software to organizations, but they're not. They're selling them to humans. They're selling them to individual people. In this case, it was traders. And so we started analyzing at the user level instead of just at the firm level. And completely new patterns emerged because certain traders across different firms that never interacted with each other, they naturally gravitated toward one set of the workflow. Other traders preferred different parts of the workflow. And those behavioral patterns became one of the most valuable sources of product insight because they were no longer asking, well, what does firm A want? They were asking, what kinds of users naturally work this way and what kind of users naturally work that way. And they were able to target their workflows toward those users, and they saw a lot more success in adoption.
That's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. We at Novus, when we were building out different types of products, I experienced the exact same thing that you are describing, that high of putting out a lot of new product, an innovative product that we thought, and getting that initial wow from the client. It's really rewarding on the surface, but then we knew something was missing. And over the years, we started really obsessing over usage. We started really measuring it with different types of tools. Exactly like what you say, what are the products that are being used? How are they being used? Where are people dropping off? Where are people switching off from the platform and going somewhere else? Just trying to understand the gaps. And it was the insight of that was like, first of all, it was fascinating because it gave us a window into the behavior. Second of all, it was like very discouraging at times because we found that the features that we thought were just awesome weren't being used. Even if the clients initially said, wow, this is cool, they just weren't being used. And I was flabbergasted, like, how did we even build the explicit goal of usage increasing usage, right? And then how do we fly blind without measuring that for so long? And now I also asked the question when we talked about, just touch base before the podcast, how many people out of your clients, how many are building with that in mind? Hey, we're building this and then we're going to measure it, right? Is that a known thing? Does everybody do that? Or is it still just a few? Yeah, I can see you shaking your head. Why? Can you tell me just a little bit about the numbers? And
well, I think why is this happening? Because founders fall in love with their products. It's their baby. They have a vision for it. No one understands that vision better and cares about it more than they do. And the challenge is that includes the customer, right? So the customer has their world of existing products, existing workflows, existing workarounds and habits. And I think where I have to lead founders along a little bit from their own vision for their product is that they need to tap into the customer's world, habits, and pain points within it and live inside of it. In terms of numbers, I have to say that it's very free. I mean, probably 80% of the time I am pushing to implement some sort of usage analytics. And especially percent of the time.
80%. Yes. 80% of the time.
Yeah.
Holy cow. So just 1 out of 5 has something.
And then there's also the question of you have something, but do you look at it? Or sometimes I'll get the answer of, we absolutely have usage analytics. Right. They're in the logs. So they're in the logs. We just we don't check the logs. But if we do, we will find the usage answers for sure.
That's amazing. Yeah. But it's an afterthought, isn't it? Where it should really be critical. And as AI so we're living in this world where the ground is shifting right underneath our feet and everything is changing. The whole concept of building a product is so different today than just a few years ago or a few months ago, right? With these frontier models that are doing crazy things. So now what's happening is the cost of building out an idea fairly well, like maybe almost good enough to ship, some products is dropping like massively, right? So all these developers are now just burning tokens and building faster. What does that do, right? How does that change the equation? So now it's faster to go from an idea to finished product. So in theory, like we could be shipping a lot more, but if we're shipping a lot more and the stuff is not getting used, where's the value? Like how do we increase the value that we provide to clients in this age of AI if we don't religiously study usage and explicitly aim to increase usage?
I agree with you. And I see a lot of excitement about the fact that everyone can build now. And I also find that leads to a lot of speed, it can also lead to a lot of chaos because then the company loses focus and they think that they can just move their roadmap faster. And I think there's also this perspective that it allows them to throw spaghetti at the wall. I hear that a lot of we're innovators and we have the ability to throw spaghetti at the wall so quickly and we see what sticks. And then, we'll just try out all of these experiments on our clients because we're able to do it so much faster. But that's just giving you more spaghetti. That's not necessarily giving you more stickiness, is what I find. So it comes back to having a focus. And you mentioned jobs to be done. Actually, I want to go back to that one because it handles this challenge really well. Even though the jobs to be done framework was created before AI, AI just accelerated the same old problems. And the key question the jobs to be done asks is, what is your product being hired to do? And the answer to that question, again, starts with asking the right questions to understand the customer. And they talk about customer progress. That's how they frame everything in terms of customer progress. That customers don't they don't wake up wanting software, they wake up wanting to accomplish something, right? So I think that the importance of focusing on what the customer is trying to accomplish is more important than ever. Looking at usage to see if you're accomplishing it is more important than ever. And also tracking the right analytics, because I also find that some companies track analytics, but those analytics are how many logins have we had today? Or, how many customers have resubscribed? Or how many features were used today instead of looking at, the customer went to that screen, but did they stay in it for 1 second or did they actually do something in it? Did they do something meaningful that helped them? What was accomplished?
What was accomplished?
Yes.
How did the customer make progress?
Yeah, and another question I thought was great with jobs to be done was which product has to be fired for yours to be hired? I find that one really interesting in fintech, in any industry really, because sometimes you're competing against another product and sometimes you're competing against internal technology resources and sometimes you're competing against the customer's own manual workarounds that are not that great, but they're used to them. So understanding what the customer needs to stop doing to start using your product is also very critical. Yeah,
I love how that jobs to be done framing helps to think about competition. And I always go back to Reed Hastings' idea that the Netflix competition is not Disney Plus or whatever, it's sleep, right? Because once people start a show, they usually go through with it. They still need to sleep. So that's the real competition. What product are they firing versus hiring a product? And in the age of agentic AI, by the way, now that does have a little bit a different meaning because you can actually hire AI agents, right? But if you could maybe drive this forward just a little bit and get really practical as much as you can for somebody in the position of a founder or maybe CIO, whatever, or CEO of a financial technology company, and they've got 7 priorities, like you said. You come in, there's 7 priorities. Now, it's tempting to do all of them, right? Because they got AI, so they can tell their developers, hey, just build them all out at once. We're going to do experiments and see what sticks. How do you first of all convince them that no, you got to focus, and then how do they go through those motions and find out which one or two they should focus on? What is the actual
something
process
I build quite often is the voice of the customer framework. So one company I worked with had invested heavily in building a new version of their platform. Actually, this is a great story because the feature set of their new platform was objectively richer than the legacy platform. Engineering had done great work, sales was excited, and customers were just not moving to the new platform. And it looked like an adoption problem, so sales was told, just sell harder, more meetings. But when very, very familiar story, isn't it? But when I started digging into the feedback, I realized that the product roadmap wasn't being driven by customer workflows. It was just being driven by all these individual requests. One salesperson comes back from a meeting, they relay their request. Another customer calls support. There's a different issue. Engineering hears something. Then there's that one vocal customer that keeps calling and asking for their top 2 features. So the roadmap had become this collection of unrelated requests, and that happens quite frequently. But everyone thought they believed they were building what the customers wanted. But what they weren't asking was, are these requests actually part of the same underlying workflow? So I built a voice of the customer framework. And what we started doing was attaching context. So what I do is every feature request, every enhancement, everything that goes into the system is tagged with who's requesting it, what type of customer they are, because not all customers are of the same persona and created equal, and which workflow is this supporting. And then we looked at, well, how many customers are actually expressing a similar need? And is this request broadly applicable, or is it highly customized? And what is the potential commercial impact? Because sometimes you do have custom requests that you should absolutely deliver because it's $1 million customer, but you need to have awareness of that in your prioritization scheme before you just make that decision. So we weren't collecting just feedback anymore. We're identifying patterns. And we could see, large asset managers are consistently struggling with this, and hedge funds were emphasizing something totally different. So we could distinguish between isolated requests and emerging market trends. And sales benefited too, because by having a system that tags everything this way, sales was also getting reports of, here's everything that your customers requested, and here's where that's part of a larger market trend, and we have now implemented the following workflows into the product. And guess what? You could tell your customers that they were part of that creation process, and they love that too.
Yeah, that's a really nice story. That's a great point. And you definitely took me back to my years in working in product, because that's exactly the problem. Like, you've got $1 million client, and no matter how hard you try, they are going to leave a footprint, leave a mark on your pipeline, right? I think one of these, jobs to be done kind of ideas that I got away from reading Clay Christensen's work and Tony Olwick and others. The customer is not necessarily an expert in the answer or in the solutions. They're an expert in their problems. So that's what you want to get out of them, that context that you're talking about. Okay, what is the actual problem? What are you trying to solve? And then if that problem rhymes with other customers, then you've got something. Versus a customer already kind of problem, and they're just spitting out the solution. Here, just build this for me. Oh boy, that's not, obviously, if you just go build that, you might be missing, first of all, you might be screwing over your pipeline and the other stuff that you want, your dream that you want to build, but you also might be missing a bigger picture. If you just stop for a second, think why they're asking this question, ask them the right way. What is the problem you're trying to solve? Ask your other customers, or listen to what the other customers are already saying. You might just do do your pipeline a service by building out a solution that's more widely, it's just more widely adopted to everybody else.
And there's no better salesperson than a customer who's advocating for you to their peers. So it's a great thing to take them along on the ride. It's a great thing to collaborate with them and start out with a small set of customers you're building with. I find those products to be the most successful, where they have a group of customers that are living this pain point every day that the product is meant to solve, and they're building it with you. And you truly immerse yourself, both through speaking with them and through observing them and just understanding their world beyond your product. You're able to create something together that addresses the rest of the market. It's really powerful.
Yeah. So as we're coming up on time, this is really great insights, Natasha. If you were standing on the top of the rooftops and had a megaphone and you could reach every single tech founder and product person, what would you tell them to do? What mistake would you tell them to avoid? And what playbook would you tell them to run? What would you tell them to do if you could just summarize it like in a neat 60-second
I could summarize it in one sentence. It's your customer's world and you're living in it. It really comes down to, if you deeply understand how your customers work and what they're trying to accomplish, you'll make better decisions regardless of whether the answer and the underlying technology is AI, or whether you're using automation or analytics, or the solution is simply better design. Understanding before building. That's the message I would want every founder to hear.
Amazing. If we've got such founders as listeners on the show right now, and they want to know where to find you, how they can get a conversation going, maybe they just want to ask you questions about product. Actually, you know what? Before we do that, can you tell me the difference between hiring a product manager internally and working with somebody like you, like an outsource? What are the pros and cons
that is
before we dive into contact?
What I found is that I see where the market is going a lot more effectively by working with a lot of different companies. And I also see similar challenges over and over again, even if I'm working across different product suites and technologies and industries. So being able to leverage what I've learned from the last 10 companies I worked with and now being able to apply it to the next one is a powerful position to be in. And it constantly keeps SIA learning. We're constantly adapting. We're constantly able to make use of the new technologies out there, the new approaches, and the new frameworks out there. So that's a huge benefit to using an outside consulting firm that is able to leverage that entire knowledge base. And where can you find us? Yes.
Those multiple perspectives.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
And it's like I said in the beginning, scaling product frameworks now. So it's not just about each individual product.
Yeah.
It's about applying what works for the last 10, 20, and each company being able to benefit from that knowledge. And where you could find me is, the best way to reach out to me is on LinkedIn, because that's where I post a lot of my product philosophy. So just reach out to me at Natasha Shamus on LinkedIn.
Yes.
And I'd love to have a chat.
So we're going to include that link so it's easy for everybody to find. I do follow your profile. You share a lot of really great, insightful stuff over there. I hope everybody here follows Natasha. If you have a question about product at all, she is an incredible resource to talk to. She has a beautiful mind when it comes to product. Please reach out to her, talk to her. She might be able to help you. She might take it to the next level. Who knows? Reach out to her. The link is going to be in the description. And thank you so much for joining us today on the Momentum Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you, Stan.
Natasha, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for tuning into Momentum. If you found today's episode valuable, don't forget to follow the show and share it with your network. This helps us a lot. To explore how AI can help your firm, visit acadia.im. I'm Stan Altshuller, and I'll see you next week with more practical insights to help turn data into growth and decisions into results with the help of AI.